Hey everybody, I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad I'm with you. This is John Sullivan. You may know me as Buffalo 66, and you may also know me from my Twitter page, Buffalo Hold'em, or my YouTube channel of the same name, or possibly another podcast I've worked on recently, like the Daily Fantasy CFL podcast. But you're here with me today to welcome back the Bet Like No One's Watching podcast. And this is my first podcast and my personal podcast, and I'm glad to be starting it back up again. And this is my first new episode in 8 months. And for those of you that listened to my earlier episodes, you're probably wondering, well, what the hell happened? Why did you just stop podcasting? Well, I sat here a long time trying to figure out how to explain all this, and I'm going to give you basically the short version, the short answer to all this. And it seems like it was 8 months ago, but it seems like even longer. Short answer is I got sick at the same time I lost my health insurance. This is around late November, early December of 2015. I was able to clear up the insurance problems in about a month, but I've had just nagging health issues all year. I like to say that I'm kind of an older version of myself. I'm not my old self. I really just can't do a lot of things that many people take for granted. Right now I've been prescribed a cane to help me walk, and I have trouble lifting objects above my shoulders. I'm not in any threat of mortality or anything like that, but I'm just not the same energy level, the same physical ability that I used to be, and that's just the way it goes. I'm very lucky to be as healthy as I am, and I know that and appreciate it. And everybody has their own struggles, and I never wanted to make this about my personal life or my personal struggles. That's not what this podcast is about at all. So hopefully going forward, my medical issues will not interfere with my ability to podcast. Like I said, although this podcast is told from my perspective, it's never intended to really be about my personal life. So why don't we just move on from that? I'm glad to be back, and let's just go on to today's topics. And before we go into what I want to talk about today, let me quickly tell all of my new listeners what this podcast is about. Why did you tune in? This podcast is about sports betting. I have several episodes archived on YouTube. What I usually do is I review my recent wagers, preview upcoming games. I try to spend a portion of every podcast on betting strategy. For those of you that have listened to my CFL podcast, I do pretty much the same thing. I review, preview, and discuss tips and strategies. I also discuss gambling-related industry news, and a lot of that revolves around DFS. For those of you that have known me for a while, know that I used to be a really heavy DFS player, and I don't play at all for a variety of reasons, including living in New York. But I will talk about that from time to time. And again, I invite all of you that want to hear my old episodes. You can check them out on my YouTube channel, which is also called Buffalo Hold'em. And fortunately, all the new episodes, of course, will all also be on YouTube. But thanks to Fear the Beard Media, who's helping me distribute this new podcast, or the return of my podcast, it'll be available on multiple platforms such as iTunes and whatever other ones, the major ones where you disseminate this type of information. So hopefully that will make it very listening friendly for you, and give you a reason to want to tune in every week. So now this gives me the rest of the time I want to spend today talking about where I'm at betting-wise and what my goals are as far as sports betting goes. Right now, at the moment, I am just betting on CFL games. For those of you that don't follow CFL, their season starts around the 20th of June and goes to about American Thanksgiving in late November. And it's week 5 of the CFL season right now, and they have a 20-week regular season plus playoffs. And CFL has been by far my most profitable sport from an ROI perspective. And even though that's the case, this year I'm pretty meager at 4-4-1 on the year. There's still a lot of season left. Those of you that are in the grind of sports betting know you can have good runs and bad runs. And I've had, the last 3 years, I've been over 57% at least every year. I'm not saying that that's going to happen every year, but I've been on a good 3-year run in CFL. So if I average out this year, I'm still ahead of the game, but I hopefully can improve my record. So for those of you that are still finding out about me and my sports betting, in the past I've wagered, I've handicapped and wagered and tracked my results on those wagers in the following: Major League Baseball, college football, NFL, CFL, the NHL, college basketball, NBA, and FIFA World Cup. And also, the listeners, my faithful listeners who have known me for a while, also know that I don't wager on head-to-head sports like tennis, boxing, or MMA, or esports. I have serious reservations about match fixing. It seems like those are the sports that are really susceptible to those types of issues, and I just stay away from those. I do enjoy, I'm kind of coming out of my shell in MMA. I've really enjoyed watching the women beat the crap out of each other. I find it entertaining, but I have no desire to wager on it. I don't feel like I have any type of advantage there. But going back to enjoyment, I would have to say the sports that I like to wager on the most, in no particular order, are CFL, NHL, and college basketball. However, the sports that I've done the best at are a little bit different. It's CFL, NFL, and college basketball. So CFL and college hoops really seem to work well for me. And I've done well in NFL, but I like hockey better, but I've had very mixed results. So what I want to talk about today is, for somebody who has handicapped all those different sports in the same calendar year, what have I learned, trying to handicap these sports over multiple years? I've learned that it's time for me to specialize my handicapping and my wagering. I'm just at a point in my life where I don't have the energy to crunch numbers for example, all NHL, NBA, and college basketball games. All are going on the same night. I just don't have the time or the energy to do that anymore. I used to be able to crank out those spreadsheets, and it's fun to crunch those numbers, but I need to learn to focus better and not just run through data. Just focus on what's important. I also need to consider the calendar of events, and what I mean by that is the seasons of the different leagues or sports that I like to follow. For example, CFL runs from June to November, and college hoops runs from November to April, and they complement each other very well. What that means is there's almost no overlap, but at the same time, there's only 1 month of the year where neither sport is running, and that's May. So you could bet CFL and you can bet college hoops, and they're not competing with one another for your attention. And that's something that's going to allow me to maximize my time, yet give me a lot of flexibility. I've actually considered trying to handicap Australian rules football for the main reason that, number one, I like it to watch it, and number two, it complements the NFL season pretty well. And, NFL runs from September to February, and Aussie football runs from March to September. So that covers the whole calendar without really any lapses at all. So I'll try to come up with a plan of attack to see what I should concentrate on going forward. I think it's time for me to not just handicap anything that's the play of the day, people that want to have action on a game. For me to want to keep, being heavily involved in it, I'm just going to have to focus more. So anyway, if you want to hear about my recent wagering, which has just been CFL, I suggest you check out the Daily Fantasy CFL podcast, which is available on iTunes and all those other platforms, and also my YouTube channel, which is produced by Fear the Beard Media. On that podcast, I give out in-depth analysis of all the games. I review the week that just finished and preview the week that comes up, and I talk about specific players, a lot from a DFS angle, but I do also talk about sports betting in that podcast and which games I like to bet on. As always, for those of you that want to know just what my plays are, I post all of my plays on my Twitter page at Buffalo Hold'em, and I also post the records. I try to update them every month. I'm a few months behind on a couple of sports, but I'm up to date on CFL and anything I'm actively wagering on. So, what to expect from this podcast from today on is I'm going to try to give you a weekly podcast that will run 15 to 30 minutes tops with enough sports betting info to keep you coming back. I want to talk about the news of the day or the week, so to speak, my thoughts on how to handle things from a psychological perspective. I think that's a huge part of being a sports bettor, is dealing with, for lack of a better term, the mind fucks that bad beats can give you, or certain just things that are out of your control. Also, where I think there are advantages, there's many ways to skin the proverbial horse. People have different methods on how they attack the market, or they do it from a numbers perspective, or a market perspective, or a crowdsourced perspective, and I may spend a whole podcast just talking about that. But I want to provide enough cool topics to keep you tuning in for that 15 to 30 minutes every week, and I want to make it a priority to make sure my health is good enough that I can do that, and provide you with fun, free content, and keep me involved in the sports betting community, because I really enjoy it. I think there's for as many shitty people that are in it, there's a lot of good people too. So thanks for checking me out. Welcome back if you're a previous listener, and we'll get you another episode going next week. So until next time, bet like no one's watching. Take care. Goodbye.